Welcome to Milestone Moments, the show where we explore the journeys that lead to success. I'm Sheila Slick, your host and founder of 5 Milestones. In every episode, we will bring you insights from the minds of entrepreneurs, leaders, and experts who will share not just their expertise, but the milestone moments that have reshaped their journeys and led to significant achievements. So if you're looking for motivation, you're in the right place. Subscribe now and discover the milestones that mark the path to success. Welcome to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. I'm your host, Sheila Slick, and today I have a very special guest, Donna Kunde. Donna is a global radio host, best-selling author, and podcast profit strategist who has produced more than 15,000 podcast episodes and built 2 internet radio stations. Now, before stepping behind the microphone, Donna spent 20 years as a military musician, an experience that shaped her belief that every voice carries a rhythm, a message, and a purpose. She is also the creator of the podcast profit system and business podcasting made easy. And she leads the Podcast Profit Lab, a practical learning community where podcasters turn their message into a business with real systems, real support, and real results. Donna's newest collaborative book, Your Message is the Business, amplifies the voices of creators who are ready to use their expertise with purpose. Welcome to the show, Donna.
Wow, I am so excited to be here. Who was that person you just introduced? I want to meet them.
Well, I know firsthand Donna is amazing, and I learned that she has a military background. And so I want to hear all about that and the pivotal moment that led you from military musician to the Profit Lab that you do today.
Yeah, thank you, Sheila. It was quite an interesting journey. I spent 20 years as a performing musician in the military, which also meant that I guarded a lot of things because you can't always play music. But what I learned as a musician is how to communicate with people that I couldn't actually see. Or if I could see them, we weren't having a direct conversation with words, right? So how do you communicate with somebody that either you don't see or you can't have that conversation with? And that's what I learned to do with music, and then began to translate it into podcasting because it's very similar. The performance behind the microphone is very similar to sitting in a military performing organization. I retired in 2011. I hadn't known it at the time, but I was bit by a tick about 14 years earlier. I had been getting sick. I didn't know what it was. I ended up, it might sound dramatic, but I ended up sitting on the couch waiting to die. Everything hurt. I didn't know what to do. And it was during that time that I had come across personal development because I thought, oh, here's something I can do while I'm just sitting here. And there was a quote in one of the courses that I was taking. It was from James Allen that said, men are anxious to improve their circumstances. They're unwilling to improve themselves. They therefore remain bound. And that's what I was finding with myself, is that until I decided to try something different, I was going to be stuck in my old habits of not being able to communicate very well, not being able to talk, not being able to walk, not being able to sit, stand, all of the things. And so that was the first turning point for me, was this step into personal growth. When the world shut down, I had decided to do something different. I decided to, with a business partner, start in the first internet radio station. And I knew that there was a lot of coaches and consultants that had nothing to do because of COVID. And so that's when I reached out and said, hey, do you want to do a radio show? And a lot of them were like, oh, I'm not sure. But when I talked them into coming, I realized that they had questions like, how do I put together a radio show? How do I talk behind the microphone? How do I do all these things? And that was tapping into my military experience. And that's where all the podcast episodes came from that I was doing. We had at one point 45 hosts doing 4 shows each a week. that was just great learning experience for all of us, really.
And so then you decided to create the community?
Yeah, there's always been a question of how do I? So once I decided to take the microphone as my next stage of life, right? I go from performing music to now performing behind a microphone for podcasting and radio. Once I decided to do that and bring others along with me, it was always answering their questions. So I invite them to do a radio show. They said, "Well, how do I do a radio show?" I said, "I don't know how you do a radio show. Let me figure it out because I know how to do programming from music." So we take the entertainment from the music realm and translate that into the podcasting space. And we come up with this formula of you have an hour to do a show. I have to run some commercials. You give me 4 13-minute episodes that each talk about a topic. And we're going to do that for 13 weeks because we're business owners. So we think in business quarters. A business quarter is 13 weeks. And then I did the math one day and I said, oh, 4 times 13, that's 52 episodes. We have a year's worth of content. And they're like, well, how do I market that? And I said, well, I don't know how you market it. Let me figure that out. And then I was figuring things out. I started to notice the patterns that were coming up because when you get so many episodes in front of you, for me, it allowed me to see patterns, and I started seeing these patterns that said, "Oh, we're building a business, and this is predictable, and no matter what you're doing behind a podcast, you're an expert. And because you're starting out as an expert, we can take that and we can turn it into a system, the podcast profit system. How you take your expertise and be able to create different offers from that, different revenue streams. That's where it went to, and it just one thing led to the next thing led to the next thing. I mapped out I'm big into road mapping. I mapped out Business Podcasting Made Easy, which is how to take an idea as a thought leader and create a radio show or a podcast that becomes your signature season that you can use for all these other things. And then once you have your signature season, well, how do you market that? How do you monetize that? How do you use that? What I found, Sheila, is that was very interesting is that your podcast can be the very next lead magnet for your business. Like 2019, everybody was downloading ebooks or white papers or whatever. Just give me your name and email address and you can have free access to my download. In this day and age, I say your podcast functions in the same way, but they're hearing your voice. And there's something so magical about being able to hear someone's voice. It's a different level of connection. It's like giving a keynote speech all around the world 24 hours a day as long as somebody's just pushing a button, right? So you're multiplying your results around the world. So that's how the podcast profit system started, was answering the questions.
And it's a book. So that was your first book, correct?
The Influencers Formula was the first book. Yeah, I had partnered with Ben Joya, who was a book coach, and we did a radio show about gathering the thoughts and the lessons that I had learned with my podcasters, and he did the same thing with his authors. And then we noticed that our roadmaps were almost identical, which really lended itself to a system that can be book or podcast, that can be, and it's really just about influence. It's about this idea, because I think a lot of podcasters, when they get behind the microphone, they think, oh, I'm brand new. I don't know what I'm doing. And that's where the industry capitalizes when they say, well, you have to just get a lot of downloads and then you can monetize. And they take this idea that I don't know what I'm talking about, so I'm going to capitalize on what a podcaster might be feeling as a new person. And I say, forget that. You're not getting behind the microphone because you don't know anything. You're getting behind the microphone because you have experience. That experience has been hard earned, and you can monetize that from your very first podcast. You don't need a lot of downloads.
So if someone wants to start podcasting, well, we're almost in 2026. So if they want to start podcasting today or get prepared to start podcasting next year, what would be that one key lesson that you could pass on so that they take action today?
That's a really great question. I like to simplify things, and I say that you don't need expensive equipment. You don't need as much time as you think you need to capture your stories. Once your stories are captured, all the things you can do with them, turn them into a book, right? How quickly did we come up with our book? Because we had captured the thoughts. It's a lot easier than you think to sit behind a microphone and do a podcast. The industry wants you to think it's a lot harder because they want to sell you something. But you have expertise. Just say yes and get started. That's what
I like that. Just say yes.
Yeah, like Nike, just do it.
And with that, let's move on to your latest book. Can you tell us about that journey and what's inside, which I'm very proud of because I'm one of the co-collaborators. I'm in one of the chapters.
Thank you. Your message is the business is the title of the book. It's just a testament to what James and I teach. James is the other coach. He was one of the people that I reached out to for the first radio station. James, you want to do a radio show? And he's like, I don't know how to do a radio show. I was like, don't worry, we got you. And he got started, got hooked on it, and has been doing six-figure years from his podcast. But to answer your question with this, when we have our podcasts, they are a gold mine to leverage and repurpose. You've already done the hard work, right? And so when you said you want to do a book, and I said, heck yeah, I didn't know what it was going to look like. I didn't know what it was going to be. I knew that there was going to be some foundations in there about the podcast profit system. I knew that had a book coming. I knew that I wanted to include my clients because they've been doing the work and I've been talking to them about having a book, and I knew that they had messaging that would fit in here, but I didn't know how the book was going to come together the way that it did. I don't think we ever know how it's going to come together until we do it. Emerson, I love Ralph Waldo Emerson, and I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says, do the thing, and then you get the energy to do the thing. Right. So if you're thinking about a podcast, you're thinking about a book, you have to take the first step. Like Dr. Martin Luther King says, you take the step without seeing the staircase because the next step appears, and then the next step appears, and the next step appears. And so I didn't know how it was going to come together until I started doing it. And it's in that process of doing that we get to put it all together. And I think it is pretty neat. Is subtitled How Everyday Creators Build Influence, Impact, and Income Through Podcasting. And it includes Pod to Book AI because we say that's the 80% advantage to capturing your thoughts in audio is you're 80% done with your book. So why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't that be the first thing that you use to monetize? And it talks about storytelling, and it talks about marketing and gamma, even intellectual property. Like, what do you do with your intellectual property? We have our resident attorney in there, Wayne Carroll, who talks about trademarking and protecting your property. So it was really neat to see how it all came together. I was just looking at the original, and there was like 12 chapters in the original. There's 20 in the afterwards. It becomes a living thing once you say yes to it, once you start going. And so anybody that's listening, if you're thinking about a podcast, you're thinking about a book, just do it. Just say yes, and then it will reveal itself.
And then that feeling when the book arrived.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I was just smelling it. It was the pages. There's something magical about holding it in your hands and touching the pages and just seeing the words in here. This is my second book, and I didn't think I was going to be so emotional to it. But they say when you have an idea, you give birth to an idea, and it is. It's a baby that we all created together.
And it is beautiful. So that 80% that she mentioned, Pod to Book, takes the audio and in about 2.5 to 3 hours turns it into a manuscript. But a manuscript is a Word document, a living document, like Donna would say, that then needs to get made your own. And so in your case, you even spread out the chapters differently. The publisher, he did such a spectacular job with the formatting that it's absolutely stunning and beautiful. And all of this is part of what makes the book the book. And then you also have to create the artwork for the cover. And I think one of the things I'm really excited about is when you collaborate with a group of people, now you have a lot of different voices and a lot of different people receiving that book, wanting to share it with others. And so that collaboration is magical. And I'm really looking forward to presenting this book to anyone that will be attending Podfest. We will be in one of the booths, and this event will be held in Orlando in mid January. And it's a place where podcasters go to grow and learn, as well as authors. So if you are an aspiring podcaster or an aspiring author, or simply looking on how to turn your podcast into a book or your book into a podcast, I'd say this is the great place to go.
I totally agree with you. Anybody that's listening to this podcast right now to realize that you're already an expert. All that the podcast and the book is doing is capturing your expertise in a way to be able to share it with other people, right? We know this, but it can be so overwhelming to start a podcast or write a book. And what I love about what you and I do is we take all of the hard work out of it and just let you shine as an expert. So when you say yes to yourself, when you say yes to your expertise, you can say yes to your podcast and yes to your book. And we put this book out, a very good, very quality book in what, 2, 3 weeks because of your platform.
And your discipline, my dear. Let's not forget that military musician. I've done hackathons and I know me, and I am an action taker, and I can take you from idea to launch in a weekend. I've helped people form their businesses in a single day. But when I meet someone that I think not only did that, but even impresses me on what it means to take action. And I think the most impressive part was that Donna was able to mobilize, organize a big group of people. So kudos to you. I cannot underestimate nor undervalue your part in that, because you really left me in awe.
Aw, thank you.
So can you tell anyone that wants to join the community and tell us a little bit about what they can expect when they join, where they can find you?
Thank you. So we are at the Podcast Profit System. It's podcastprofitsystem.com. Podcastprofitsystem.com, perfect place to go. It explains what we have there. There's the lab. The lab is a community for all podcasters to join, whether you have an existing podcast or an idea for a podcast. This is your home, your first place to come. From there, if you want coaching support, additional support from myself and James, you can choose the creator track, which will create your first 13-week, 52 episodes of your season. Your very first podcast will take you through the methodology for that. That's the creation track. Or you can opt into the monetization track if you have an existing podcast. And through mastermind and coaching, we'll get specific into your ideas on your first step beyond just the podcast on how you want to monetize that. The lab is free until December 31st, so act act fast. After December 31st, there will be a monthly fee to stay in the membership group, but it's the feedback we're getting. We have over 70 people in there right now, and the feedback we're getting from podcasters is really incredible. So I know that we're on the right track to serve more people.
I will go ahead and leave the URL in the comments. And I also invite you to purchase Your Message is the Business. We have it at the introductory price right now. I think it's under $6, which I think is a great deal for the value that you'll receive when you buy the book. So I'll make sure to leave that so that through the end of the year, you too can perhaps gift yourself the book or give it to someone that perhaps needs just that tiny little push.
100%.
So thank you very much, Donna, for joining me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Sheila. It's always great to talk about podcasting and books and all the exciting ways that we can make a bigger impact together.
And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Milestone Moments in Business and Leadership. Until next time.